Mic check. Check, 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 check. Check, check. Cool. All right. Hello. Hello, everybody. Welcome. Happy Sunday. This is such a big Sunday. There is so much stuff happening. It is great. But before we get started, I'm going to invite everyone to sit in these two sections. We're going to invite everyone to please sit in these two sections. 没有就坐这两区就可以了，没关系。这两区，这两区。太靠近的话，也可能有点像 SeaWorld 的 Splash Zone， 所以可能不需要太靠近。但是尽量这两区。Today we have such a special treat for all of you. No. I love that you're here. We have such a special treat for all of you. This is great. So, hi everybody. My name is Joe. Nice to meet all of you. I'm one of the youth counselors here at Hope Church. I'm also one of the deacons here at Hope Church. We are so thrilled that all of you decided to join us today. I know we have parents of youth. It sounds like we also have parents of kids who are a little bit younger, which is perfect. We also have parents of kids who are in college. So really excited for all of you to be here. Thank you, because this community, this is the church. The church is families coming together. And so before I fully jump in, I want to let you know I'm using a mic. The reason being, this is being streamed. This will be on YouTube. We had people ask us if we can put this up because some people who are serving are not able to see, are not able to participate, so they want to hear what's going on too, okay? But I do encourage all of you to be here. So, to start off, our Hope Church Youth Mission, our mission is to help our middle school and high school students to embrace their unique personal callings from God, received in personal relationships with Christ, and fostered in a Christ-centric community of believers, which is this, right? So therefore, our vision for our Hope Church Youth Ministry is that our middle school and high school students here will be baptized as disciples of Christ, engage in their personal faith, and mobilize to serve here at this Hope Church. Really, really cool. I just want to share a little bit because just today we had 2 more baptisms, and it is really, really exciting, and God is moving in such big ways. I also want you all to know that with all of our youth students coming in, we send them each home with a booklet. And that booklet has 25 days of devotions that they can do each day. And we keep up with them. Each week we have a midweek call-in. Some of you may be aware. We call them in the middle of the week on Zoom for 10, 15 minutes just to make sure everyone's staying on track. So we are helping them to engage in their personal faith. And then lastly, as you see, Sunlight is coming up next week and the week after. We have 10 or 12 middle school students serving there. We have high school students serving on the on the worship team. So really cool that God is moving in amazing ways. Because this is our vision, the parent conference serves this purpose, that we can live as a community, learn as a group, and grow as a church. Like I said, we have families here with kids that are younger, which is amazing. We get to have these conversations earlier in the process. We have a group of families here where the parents are maybe of kids who are older, kids who are younger. Now we get to have a bit of maybe mentoring, maybe a bit of sharing, and a bit of prayer for one another, because we all have one hope in mind, and that hope is to raise the next generation well, right? Frederick Douglass says this: it is easier to raise strong children than to fix broken adults. And I think where I look up to all of you, because in 5, 10 years when my kids are the age that your kids are, I hope to also be sitting in your seats learning about how to parent. Because for each of you, you're my role models. Yesterday we had this great green olive tree meeting, and we had all these families coming together, and we all had one purpose, and that purpose is to provide a safe space for our kids, just like all of you are providing safe spaces for our children. So thank you all for doing such great work. Thank you all for being amazing parents. I hope that when I'm in your shoes, I can come to you all for advice and asking you about how to handle my teenage son or how to handle my teenage daughter, right? So thank you all for being role models for all of us young families. But today, we have such a special treat. Today, this is our agenda. Our agenda is we're going to have a testimony sharing. We're going to talk about habits of the household, and we're going to have a breakout session for each of us. The topic that we're going to talk about today is a very special one. The topic we're talking about today is habits and routines of a household. James Clear, in his book Atomic Habits, have you all heard of Atomic Habits, the book, right? 原子习惯, 是不是? Atomic Habits. In his book, he says, every habit you follow through is a vote of confidence in who you want to become. Every habit you follow through is a vote of confidence in who you want to become. If we extrapolate that to organizations and companies, every company has systems and cultures and processes, right? And these processes and systems will be there. It's whether or not you're intentional about them. Because these systems are what you allow to happen. It's just whether or not you choose to be intentional. So if we think about our families, every time we follow through with a routine that we intentionally devise or design, it is a vote of confidence in who God has called us to be. Every habit that maybe we allow to happen that we aren't so mindful of in the other way points us in a different direction. So today it is really crucial that we have this conversation. But I also recognize that it's not easy. And so I invited a very special, my good friend, to come and share his testimony. Here's the thing. I hope that we get to have more parents share about their stories. Because at the end of the day, none of us are perfect parents. But we can hold each other up. Today, Pastor Ian preached about witnessing, being simply telling your story about how Christ has changed your life. So I hope that you can all hold the space for him. It takes a lot of courage to come up here. But I hope that this is the first of many, and we're going to invite all of you at some point to come up here and share your stories as well. So the prompt I gave our friend is, what has it been like to try and establish rhythms and habits in your household? What are the challenges, and what are some of the easier parts, and what are some of the struggles? So if you will all please join me in welcoming Victor as he shares our testimony for today.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Joe. So when Joe approached me about just sharing with everybody, I was a little bit nervous. I was a little bit kind of hesitant because I feel like I try as a father, do things at the house, but I feel like there's maybe some successes, maybe some failures. And so I think for today, I want to just share what we do at home, what I do with my wife, with my kids. So before we jump into that, I have 2 kids. For those that don't know, I have a son and a daughter. My son, Christopher, he's in college. He's going to UC Riverside. He's a freshman over there. And then I also have a daughter, Serena. She's a junior in high school. Okay, so that kind of gives you guys a little bit of perspective of where I am in my life, my kids, how old they are. And so I want to just, think back a little bit, back in, I would say, COVID times. Because I feel like COVID times was hard for our household, especially kids not being able to go to school. But I feel like during the COVID time, it was also a bit of a blessing in our family. And I say this because we were not able to go out, we were not able to go to school, we were not able to go to church. We were doing all these things virtually, right? We were going online for church. And so that gave us a lot of time together at home. I feel like, especially with teenage kids, they are becoming themselves. They are becoming their own person. And I feel like a little bit more distance, I think, with parents. They want to hang out with their kids. They want to hang out with their friends. And so I feel like the COVID times was an opportunity for us to be together, even though we had to, right? Because we couldn't go out, we couldn't do things. And so at that time, I feel like that's when we really got close as a family. Just being at home, we had to deal with each other. We had to be with each other, even though sometimes they're actually in their rooms, right? But it was just in our house. We couldn't really go out anywhere. And so I feel like at that time, in those COVID times, it was when we really got close. And we were able to, as a family, really have spent time together, just praying, using the daily devotions that we got. And we would go through the daily devotions, go through the passage. We would share the passages, share our thoughts as far as the verses of the day. And then after that, we would go into a time of prayer. So I feel like just thinking back, it was such a such a good time because I feel like now that we're out of COVID, I feel like we don't have enough of that. I feel like now they have all these things to do, their schoolwork, their workload, and then my son, obviously, he's not around anymore because he's in college. I feel like that family time of just reading the Word and just prayer is. I want to be honest. We don't have that anymore, to be honest. So I oftentimes yearn for that. I do my thing, right? I go, I walk my dog, I'm listening to the daily devotions, and I'm with the Lord. But what about my family? Where's my wife in her spiritual walk? Where's my son? Where's my daughter? Right? All you can do is encourage. All you can do is pray for them. But that walk is their own walk, right? I desire so much for that and for them to do that. But at the end of the day, they have to want it. They have to love God in order to pursue Him, in order to read the Word. And so, now what I do is, after the daily devotions, there's just some sayings, some things I try to share with them, right? Try to share with them, with in our chats, in our family chats. I try to show them by setting an example, right? By doing. I know that they see it, and I hope that they remember, all the things. Just as little sharings I do with my kids, whether they're with me, whether they're somewhere else. My prayer is that they just be there. They just continue that journey, right? And nobody said it was going to be easy. Nobody says that they're going to stick with it. We don't know. And so I'm trying to just plant that seed and just encourage them to continue to reading the Word and be with Lord in the difficult times, in the good times, right? That they always have the Lord, have Jesus Christ. And so it's difficult now. I think in our household, we don't really do a lot of together family time, worship time, reading the Word together, prayer time. I do that every morning on my own, and then I try to push my family to do it. So I think building habits is really important. For me, at least, I'm really just looking forward to the daily verses that I get, from our daily devotions. Now, I'm passionate about it, but I don't know about my kids. I don't know about my wife, where she's at in her walk. And so a lot of prayer, a lot of just sharing with them what I read. And I'm hoping that they're reading the chats as well, right? Because I feel like sometimes my kids are not looking at my chats, are not responding to my chats, because there's so much noise, there's so much going on outside, right? So 我觉得主要是真的要很多祷告 and just be there, set an example. So I would say that's my sharing, Joe. So thank you.
So what a thank you for that sharing, and it's real. Took a lot of vulnerability and courage. So thank you, Victor. And I think he speaks to the hearts of a lot of us when we talk about how challenging it is. Today, we're going to go through a book called Habits of the Household. This session or this conversation is too much to go through in just one session, so we're going to do a second part to this in January. But I first want to introduce you to this particular statement. This is what Justin says, the author of the book we're talking about today. He says, parenting, seen properly, is an unceasing spiritual battle. A battle that God is using to refine us, a battle that God will win for us. But if it feels like a fight to you, that's because it is. And I think Victor, I didn't show these slides to him, but this is what he shared with us, that it's a battle. It's a really, really tough battle. But thankfully, we also know that God will win this war for us, right? And so if we believe that, we can move into this next step knowing we already have the victory at hand. So this is talking about the roles and responsibilities of parents. So 2 months ago, our last session, we talked about the anxious generation and the book coming about, talking about what the role of the parent is. And in it, it says, or this is what Dr. Becky and Jonathan Haidt, the author, says. It says that the responsibilities of a parent are to establish safety by setting boundaries for our students or our kids. And then I don't know if you're reading that second statement. It says a kid's job is to develop emotional regulation skills by experiencing and expressing their feelings, including frustrations and reaction to these boundaries. So that is our role. Our role is to help set these boundaries. But what are our boundaries? The boundaries are, as parents, this may be our role, but the responsibility is to help form our kids. The responsibility is to help form our kids, form our children. John Mark Comer uses a different word. He uses the word unfold. He says that our responsibility is to unfold our kids into the people that God has designed them to become. Our responsibility is to unfold our kids into the people that God has designed them to become. And if we think about that, if we realize the importance of that things that we do, the daily routines that we have, the intentions that we have behind these routines are to form our kids into godly people, all of a sudden this becomes very, very crucial. The book, like I said, is called Habits of the Household. It is written by a gentleman named Justin Whitmore Early. He is a lawyer. He has, I think, 4 boys. But his book, the subtitle is called Practicing the Story of God in Everyday Family Rhythms. And we'll go over what some of those rhythms are this week as well as in the next session. But his thesis, the thesis of this book is this statement here. It is, your habits don't change God's love for you. God's love for you can and should change your habits. Right? I'm going to repeat that again. Your habits do not change God's love for you or your family. God's love for you can and should absolutely change your habits and routines. And I want to focus on these 2 statements, or this statement, but 2 parts. The second part we'll talk about in January, but the first part we're going to sit on for today. And this is that your habits or our routines, as much as we're talking about the routines, they don't change God's love for us. How do we know this? We know this because in Romans, this is what Paul says. Romans says, but God demonstrated his own love for us in this, that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. That it wasn't about our habits. It wasn't about us being perfect. It wasn't about us leading our families well, our daily walks, or all those things. Even before all of that, God has already loved us and already accepted us for who we are, so much so that he sent Jesus to die on the cross for us. And so as you're thinking about, gosh, my intentions, my routines, the things that I want to do with my kids, and it feels like it's so hard, and it feels like I'm not achieving the standard that I want to set, if God has grace and mercy for you, please have grace and mercy for yourselves as well. So that is step 1, knowing that our habits don't change God's love for us. However, God's love can and should change our habits. This is what Paul also says to Titus. He says, for the grace of God has appeared, bringing salvation for all people, training us to renounce ungodliness and worldly passions, and to live self-controlled, upright, and godly lives in the present age, waiting for our blessed hope, the appearing of the glory of our great God and Savior. That the grace of God is Jesus, and he has appeared so that we, for all people, can be trained to renounce ungodly and worldly desires, to live self-controlled, upright, godly lives. So that at the end of the day, our hope is that as families, we don't condemn ourselves for not being there, but we should be encouraged and inspired to move toward that direction. Okay, everybody good so far? All right. And then lastly, this is also what Paul says. Paul says, for Christ is the end of the law for righteousness to everyone who believes. Today we had 2 students come up and they gave their testimonies. One of them said that because of Christ, he learned to love himself. Another one said because of Christ, she now has peace in her heart. This is what it's about. So with that, what we're going to do in the next month, so Christmas month, right, into January, is we're going to take an inventory of our daily routines and habits. And these are the categories that this particular author uses. So later on after a session today, we have these forms that I am going to pass out to each of you. And the forms are going to ask you all, encourage you all to take inventory of what's going on. And the categories are this. There's, some of this is maybe geared towards younger kids, but I think it fits for all of us. It's talking about waking. How do we personally wake? So Victor says he wakes up, he goes and walks his dog, and he's listening to the Word of God. Or do we wake and check Instagram, right? That's what I do. Or when we go to meal times, what does that look like? Do we have a routine for mealtime? In fact, they've also done studies that kids or students or adults who grow up to be stronger Christians often start with family dinners together at home. Discipline, how we choose to discipline our students. Our screen time we talked about last month. Family devotions, what Victor talked about, going through the Word of God together. Marriage between you and your spouse, because you and your spouse are the biggest testimonies and the biggest things that they see. Pastor Ian mentioned last month that more is caught than is taught. How your kids see how you love each other is how they will eventually choose the right partners and how they will love the other partner. Work, how we choose to approach work. Play, conversation, and lastly, how we choose to wind down before bedtime. In the form that we're going to share with all of you, it's going to have many of these categories except play. Right, I took that one out, but we're going to have many of these categories. And the categories you're going to go through and list, take your time, right? Use the whole month. What are the routines that you all have? Do I wake up and go straight to my phone? Do we all as wake up and just rush out the door? What does that look like? Who initiates these routines? And we're going to first take inventory because we have a good direction, but if we don't know where we are, we have nowhere we're going, right? We have to know where we are, know what that looks like so we know how to get there. Right, so we're going to go through some of those things this month. However, this is the time when we all get to come together and hold each other in prayer and conversation. So, as usual, what we're going to do is we're going to break up into groups of 4, right? 3 or 4, 5 at most. So if you all can break up into groups of 3 or 4, if you've sat with some families before and you want to do so again, please do. If you sat with some families before, you're like, oh, I want to go visit other families, please do as well. But please take this time. We're going to spread throughout this entire room. Go and find a group of 3 or 4. Settle on in. I'm going to give you the questions after, okay? So we'll have 10 seconds. Let's go into our groups. We'll split up, and we're going to take some time. Spouses, feel free to be in the same group if you want. Spouses, feel free to be in separate groups if you want. It's up to you. Yeah, so groups of 3 or 4. The reason why, if it goes anywhere past that, it becomes hard to have a close, kind of intimate conversation, okay? So groups of 3 or 4. We have some families back there as well. Please gather up. Groups of 3 or 4. This is more than 3 or 4. You run a business. You can't have terrible math. Okay, 2 circles. All right. So for the next 10 to maybe 15-ish minutes, here's the one question, the same question we asked Victor this morning or this afternoon. The question is, what has it been like to try and establish habits or routines in your household? What has your experiences been like to try and establish routines and habits in your household? And you can share about your successes. You can share about your struggles. You can share about where you are emotionally really upset because you try to do this every day and it seems to never work. please take some time and share with one another what your experience has been in trying to establish routines or routines or habits in your household. Okay? So we'll use the next 10 to 15 minutes. Thank you.